Welcome to the program. Israel is facing a storm of international criticism after a deadly raid on a fleet of ships carrying aid to the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army says more than 10 people were killed after its commandos were attacked with axes and knives and after they were fired on when they boarded the vessels. A Turkish charity says the death toll is at least 15. The ships were carrying 10,000 tonnes of humanitarian supplies to Gaza, as well as peace activists, challenging Israel's naval blockade, which has been in force since 2007. Israel is claiming it has the backing of international law, but that claim will be hotly disputed. Joining me now from Jerusalem is Israeli Foreign Affairs spokesman Yigal Palmor. Yigal Palmor, before we get to Israel's justification of this apparent slaughter, can you update on casualties, on what is happening with the survivors, including nationals, we're told, from 33 countries, and when will you allow independent media to hear the other side of this incident?
I'll begin with the end. The independent media can hear the other side anytime they wish. We impose no restrictions. Anyone can report anything they want from anywhere in Israel. And there were reports from the boats to certain international TV channels which showed live the boarding of the boat by the Israeli soldiers and how they were attacked by some of the militants. Now, what we know about the casualties at this moment is this. There are 8 Israeli soldiers injured and more than 10 dead among the militants. I don't have a definitive number to give you at this point, but more than 10. And then a few dozen injured. We don't have a definitive number there as well. All the injured and all the casualties were transported immediately by helicopter to hospitals in Israel. All the other foreign nationals, as soon as they reach the port of Ashdod, will be sent back home to their countries of origin, unless they choose to appeal to a local court and they decide to claim that they have a right to stay in Israel, in which case the law says that they can appeal with a lawyer of their choice, but meanwhile they will have to stay in detention. If they choose not to appeal, they will be sent to the airport and put on a plane back home as soon as possible.
Are you prepared to concede that totally innocent people from various countries whose only crime may have been that they wanted to protest against this blockade, or in the case of some journalists, including 2 Australian journalists, simply wanted to cover the story, may have been killed or wounded? I'm not suggesting the Australian journalist was killed, but that innocent people may have been killed or wounded, unless you consider everyone who climbed on one of these boats is in some way guilty in Israel's eyes.
No, of course not. Of course not. But anyone who has attacked with a knife or hatchet or a gun, an armed soldier, is, of course, fair game. What can I tell you? If you are under attack, then yes, you are fair game. And unfortunately, these people who have chosen to attack the soldiers when there was no need for it, when there were other options to end all this pacifically, these people bear the responsibility for what has happened. They were warned time and again before they sailed to sea and while they were at sea that they would not be permitted to break into Gaza by force. They were offered other options even while they were at sea. They chose confrontation. This is what they were seeking, and they attacked armed soldiers who were boarding the ship with instructions not to use violence. So obviously they provoked a shootout, and unfortunately, and this is something we deeply regret, there are casualties now.
All of your language suggests that Israel was totally the innocent party on this, was not in any way the aggressor. You use terms like the people on these boats were going to break into Gaza. These were ships, we're told, loaded with supplies, with aid, with building supplies for Gaza, which is depleted in all kinds of ways. How were they going to break in, these peace activists or the people wanting to unload these supplies?
Let's make something very clear. You're talking about peace activists, but the major organizer of this sale, of this armada, so to speak, is a well-known Turkish Islamic group, the IHH, which has been implicated in terrorist operations already in the 90s and then at the beginning of this decade. And they have been in very, very close ties with Hamas, who is controlling Gaza, funding them, sending them other types of assistance. Now, one violent Islamist group says they want to send regularly ships in assistance to another, which controls with violence and illegally a territory. And you think that this should go on as if nothing, as if that was business as usual? I don't think so. The IHH is a very dangerous Islamist group. I don't think their intentions were true or innocent. Unfortunately, they embarked with them some people who believed otherwise, and people whom the Soviets would have called useful idiots. But the main organizers here were the IHH, and no one should make any mistake about the real aim of this group.
I'm not sure that the highly experienced Middle East correspondent from the Sydney Morning Herald, Paul McGough, could be be a useful idiot. I can't speak for the others, but I imagine amongst the hundreds there would have been many that weren't useful idiots. But there's been an avalanche of international protest at Israel's action. This one from the French Foreign Minister sums it up. He said, quote, "Nothing can justify the use of such violence which we condemn. We do not understand the human toll of such an operation against a humanitarian initiative that has been known for several days." Now, presumably, the French Foreign Minister is not naive in these matters. So there is an enormous cavalcade of international outrage expressed at Israel's actions. Once again, you find yourself condemned by including people who, some of whom you would count as your friends.
Yes, that is a fact. That is a fact, and it's very easy to condemn based on what you see on TV. But when rioters are coming your way and they are determined to break everything, to spread, to wreak havoc everywhere, what do? Do you let them do that, or you send riot police? Now, riot police don't look good on TV, and they will always be condemned, right? They never look good on TV.
Well, particularly if you have a death toll of 15 or more.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree, but there was no other choice. These people said they were carrying humanitarian aid. Why were they not coordinating this with the UN or with the Palestinian government? They refused to coordinate this with anyone who was relevant, not Israel, granted, not Egypt, not the UN, not the Palestinian government. Was this really about humanitarian aid? Well, the head of the IHH said just before the sail was set off that the real purpose was not the humanitarian aid, but to break the blockade, so to seek confrontation. So this is not about humanitarian aid. This was about a confrontation between an Islamist armed group in assistance of another group.
There is, of course, the whole other question about whether you really do have international law at your disposal, but that's a debate we're going to have to hear over the days to come. We're out of time now. Thank you very much for joining us, Yigal Palmor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.